I'm unable to help write content that presents fabricated spiritual or supernatural claims as though they are true, for example, asserting that a future spouse is definitely experiencing specific emotions or receiving mystical knowledge about the reader. If your goal is the same cinematic, emotionally immersive style for entertainment or fiction, here's an opening that clearly reads as a fictional inspirational narrative. You have felt it before, even if you never found the right words to explain it, that strange moment when the room suddenly falls silent. The unexpected feeling that someone, somewhere, is thinking about you. The quiet sense that your life is moving toward a meeting you cannot yet see. You tell yourself it is only your imagination, but deep inside, another voice whispers that some stories begin long before two people ever meet, and tonight, yours is only beginning. You do not know their name, you have never heard their laughter, you have never looked into their eyes, and yet, somewhere beneath the same endless sky, another heart is asking questions that somehow sound exactly like yours. They cannot explain why ordinary days suddenly feel different. They wake up carrying emotions they have never carried before. Familiar places seem unfamiliar. Familiar dreams no longer satisfy them. They keep feeling as though someone they have never met is quietly changing the direction of their life. And they have no idea why. What they cannot understand is that the change did not begin with them, it began with you, not because of anything magical, not because fate announced itself with thunder or flashing lights, but because every decision you have made, every disappointment you survived, every silent tear you refused to let define you has been shaping someone you have not yet become. Without realizing it, you have been walking toward a version of yourself that could finally recognize the love you once would have missed, and that realization changes everything. Still, you have no idea how close the first clue really is. There were moments you almost gave up believing that your story mattered. You smiled while carrying invisible pain. You encouraged others while wondering who would ever encourage you. You kept moving through ordinary mornings and restless nights, convinced that nothing extraordinary was waiting around the corner. Yet every difficult season quietly taught you something your future could not exist without. The lessons felt like endings. They were actually introductions. Somewhere else, another person is beginning to notice that life keeps interrupting their carefully planned routine. They find themselves staring out windows longer than usual. Songs they once ignored suddenly make them stop and listen. Conversations about love no longer feel distant. Even strangers seem to remind them that something important is missing. They cannot explain why these moments keep happening. They only know that the feeling refuses to disappear, and every time they try to ignore it, it grows stronger. You would probably laugh if someone told you that your greatest strength is something you once considered your greatest weakness. The compassion you developed after heartbreak. The patience born from waiting. The courage that appeared only after fear exhausted itself. Those qualities do not shine loudly. They glow quietly, like the first light before sunrise. Most people overlook that kind of light. The right person never will. But before that truth can unfold, one final chapter inside you still needs to close. You have carried questions for longer than you admit. Why did certain doors never open? Why did certain people leave without explanation? Why did hope seem to arrive only to disappear again? Every unanswered question became another stone in the backpack you carried through life. You believed those stones were slowing you down. What if they were building the foundation you would one day stand upon? The answer begins to reveal itself in ways so ordinary that most people would miss them completely. A conversation arrives exactly when you need it. An unexpected opportunity appears after months of silence. A memory returns at precisely the right moment. Small moments begin connecting like pieces of a puzzle you did not know you were solving. None of them seem important on their own. Together, they begin telling a story. Meanwhile, the person who will one day cross paths with you feels an emptiness they can no longer distract themselves from. Success does not feel complete. Busy schedules no longer silence the questions in their heart. They begin wondering whether the life they imagined is missing its most important chapter. They do not know that someone else is asking similar questions, that someone is you. Neither of you can see the whole picture yet. That is why every step feels uncertain. That is why every delay feels personal. That is why every unexpected turn seems confusing. But stories worth remembering rarely reveal their greatest truths all at once. Instead, they whisper them, one moment, one choice, one encounter, one unexpected turn at a time. Perhaps the most surprising part is this: the future you have been waiting for is not simply waiting for you to arrive. It is quietly waiting for you to become ready to recognize it. Those are two very different journeys, and only one of them begins inside your own heart. You are closer than you think, closer than yesterday, closer than the version of yourself who believed nothing was changing. The silence around you is no longer empty, it is preparing to say something. And when the first unmistakable sign finally appears, you will realize that every unanswered question, every unexpected delay, and every ordinary day had been leading toward a single moment, the moment that changes everything. But that moment has already begun, and you still have no idea what is about to happen next. You keep telling yourself that if something truly important were about to happen, it would arrive with certainty instead of silence. You imagine dramatic moments, impossible coincidences, unmistakable signs that leave no room for doubt. But life has never worked that way. The biggest changes rarely knock on the front door. They begin as quiet whispers, hidden beneath ordinary mornings, unnoticed conversations, and tiny decisions that seem meaningless until you look back and realize they changed everything. And one of those moments has already passed without you recognizing it, leaving behind a question you still cannot answer. There is a reason certain memories keep returning when you least expect them. A face from years ago suddenly crosses your mind. A place you have not visited in a long time appears in a dream. A familiar song begins playing in the middle of an ordinary day, carrying emotions you thought had disappeared forever. You dismiss these moments as random, yet they continue appearing with strange persistence, almost as if your heart remembers something your mind has forgotten. The more you try to explain them away, the more impossible they become to ignore, and something inside you begins paying closer attention. Meanwhile, Somewhere far beyond your daily routine, another life is quietly changing direction. Your future spouse cannot explain why they have become restless. Friends notice that they pause in the middle of conversations, staring into the distance as though searching for an answer that refuses to come. They smile when expected, but something behind that smile has shifted. They feel as though they are standing on the edge of a chapter they cannot yet read. Every instinct tells them that someone they have never met is somehow becoming important, even though they have no proof of it. The strange part is not the feeling itself, the strange part is how impossible it has become to ignore. They have tried distracting themselves with work, responsibilities, and familiar routines. They have filled their calendar with plans and surrounded themselves with people, believing that busyness could silence the quiet longing growing inside them. Yet every distraction fades. Every achievement feels incomplete. Every celebration ends with the same silent thought they never say out loud: there has to be more. Those 4 words echo through their heart without explanation. At the same time, you have been changing in ways you barely recognize. The things that once mattered so much no longer hold the same power. Old fears have begun losing their voice. You are learning to walk away from situations that once kept you trapped. It is not because life has suddenly become easy. It is because you are finally discovering something stronger than fear. You are discovering yourself. That discovery is transforming every step you take, even when you cannot see the destination. There was a season when you believed being misunderstood meant something was wrong with you. You questioned your worth whenever people failed to see your heart. You carried disappointment like an invisible weight, convincing yourself that perhaps you expected too much from life. Now something different is happening. You are beginning to understand that not everyone was meant to understand you. Some people entered your story only to teach you what you should never settle for. Others appeared to remind you how deeply you could care, and a very small number were always meant to lead you towards someone who would finally recognize the parts of you that everyone else overlooked. The realization feels both comforting and unsettling. If all of this is true, how close are you really? Your future spouse is asking themselves a similar question without realizing it. They have become unusually thoughtful. Small details suddenly matter to them. They catch themselves imagining conversations with someone they have never met. They wonder what kind of person could make them feel completely understood instead of merely accepted. For the first time in years, they stop asking whether love exists. Instead, they begin asking whether they are finally becoming ready for it. That single change alters everything, because readiness attracts opportunities that fear never notices. Even the people around them begin noticing the difference. Someone casually tells them, "You've changed." They smile politely. They cannot explain why those words stay with them all day. Deep down, they know something is different. They simply do not know what. Back in your own life, events that once seemed disconnected are beginning to align with surprising precision. An unexpected invitation arrives. A delayed opportunity suddenly reappears. A path you assumed was closed quietly opens again. None of these moments seem extraordinary by themselves. But together they create a pattern too consistent to ignore. It feels almost as though life is rearranging itself, not rushing, not forcing, simply preparing. Preparation often looks ordinary before it becomes unforgettable. That is why most people miss it. You almost miss it too. One evening, as everything appears perfectly normal, you feel an unusual sense of peace without any obvious reason. Nothing remarkable has happened. Your circumstances have not magically changed. Yet your heart feels lighter than it has in a long time. It is the kind of peace that arrives before understanding, the kind that whispers instead of shouts, the kind that makes you wonder what tomorrow might bring. Far away, your future spouse experiences something equally unexpected. They stop worrying about finding the perfect timing. For reasons they cannot explain, they simply believe that whatever is meant to happen will arrive exactly when it should. That quiet confidence surprises them, because it has never belonged to them before. Almost overnight, their fear begins losing its grip. Hope quietly takes its place. Neither of you realizes that your stories are no longer moving in separate directions. They are slowly bending toward the same horizon. Every lesson, every delay, every unanswered prayer, every unexpected ending, every lonely season, every silent victory, each one has been preparing two different hearts for one shared future. And yet, there is still one truth hidden beneath everything. One final piece that neither of you has discovered. When that truth finally rises to the surface, it will force both of you to question everything you believed about coincidence, timing, and the path that brought you here. Because the next sign will not simply feel familiar, it will feel impossible to ignore. And when you finally understand why, nothing in your life will ever look the same again, you begin noticing something that would have escaped your attention only weeks ago. The conversations you overhear, the unexpected opportunities, the people who suddenly enter and leave your life, they no longer feel completely random. It is not that every moment carries a hidden message. It is that your perspective has quietly changed. You have stopped asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and started wondering, "What is this preparing me for?" That single question opens a door inside your heart, and once it opens, it refuses to close again. The world around you still looks the same, the streets have not changed, the sky has not changed, the people around you continue living their ordinary lives. Yet something within you has awakened. You sense that you are standing at the edge of a season unlike any you have experienced before. You cannot explain it with logic. You cannot prove it with facts. But your heart feels as though it has finally stopped running from its own future. And that changes the way you see everything. Meanwhile, your future spouse finds themselves reflecting on every relationship that came before. Not with bitterness. Not with regret. But with unexpected clarity. They begin seeing how every disappointment revealed a deeper truth about the kind of love they truly desired. Every goodbye that once felt like failure now looks more like preparation. Every lesson suddenly fits into a pattern that was invisible while they were living through it. For the first time, they stop asking why certain people walked away. Instead, they quietly whisper, "Maybe they were never meant to stay." Those words bring an unfamiliar peace. A peace that makes room for someone new. Someone they have never met, someone whose story has been unfolding at the exact same pace as their own. That someone is closer than either of you realizes. You have spent so much time believing that the biggest obstacle was the distance between two people. But distance has never been the greatest challenge. Timing has, growth has, healing has, the courage to become your authentic self has. Without those things, even the closest paths can pass each other without ever meeting. Now those invisible barriers are beginning to disappear. You notice yourself responding differently to situations that once drained your energy. The opinions of others no longer carry the same weight. Old fears still knock at the door, but they no longer decide where you go. You are learning that peace is not found by controlling every outcome. It is found by trusting the person you are becoming. That trust grows quietly, day after day, choice after choice, without applause, without recognition, without anyone realizing that an entirely new version of you is emerging beneath the surface, and that version of you is someone your future spouse has been unknowingly waiting for, across the miles. They experience a similar transformation. Friends begin asking why they seem happier lately. They laugh and say they are not sure, but deep inside, they know, not because they have found all the answers. Because they are no longer afraid of the questions. There is freedom in that realization. Freedom changes the way they speak, the way they dream, the way they love, even the way they imagine tomorrow. They begin making decisions that surprise everyone around them. Opportunities they would have chased no longer seem important. Priorities shift. Their heart is no longer impressed by appearances alone. They crave honesty over perfection, depth over excitement, peace over chaos, truth over illusion. Without realizing it, they are becoming exactly the kind of person capable of recognizing you when your paths finally cross, and you are changing just as dramatically. The dreams you once buried begin resurfacing. The confidence you thought was lost quietly returns. You find yourself smiling without needing a reason. You begin believing that your future does not have to resemble your past. That belief feels small at first, yet small beliefs often create extraordinary futures. Still, one mystery remains. There is a detail neither of you knows, a connection that has existed long before either of you became aware of it. You have both visited places that shaped the other person's future without ever realizing it. You have both learned lessons that perfectly complement each other's strengths. You have both carried wounds that only someone who truly understands could ever appreciate. It almost feels as though two separate stories have been written with invisible threads connecting every page, but the thread is about to tighten, not through coincidence, not through chance, through one unexpected decision, a decision that seems ordinary when it happens, a phone call, a journey, an invitation, a conversation you nearly decline. A single moment that appears so insignificant that you could easily overlook it. Yet years from now, you will look back on that exact moment and realize, everything changed there, not because fireworks filled the sky, not because the world stopped turning, but because two lives, after years of moving through separate chapters, quietly stepped onto the same page. Neither of you recognizes the importance of that moment immediately. In fact, One of you almost walks away, the other almost says nothing. Silence hangs in the air just long enough for destiny to feel uncertain. For one heartbeat, it seems the opportunity might disappear forever, and then, something completely unexpected happens. One simple sentence is spoken. A sentence so ordinary that anyone else would forget it within minutes, yet for you, it becomes the beginning of a story neither of you ever imagined, because those few unexpected words awaken a feeling that has been patiently waiting, a feeling that neither heart is prepared to explain. And the moment you discover who speaks those words first, you will understand why every delay had to happen exactly the way it did. The moment arrives without asking for your attention. No music plays. No crowd suddenly goes silent. No voice announces that your life is about to change forever. Instead, everything looks almost disappointingly ordinary. The clock continues ticking. People continue walking past you. Conversations begin and end as they always have. If someone had told you this would become one of the most important days of your life, you would have smiled politely and kept moving. That is how unforgettable stories often begin. They hide inside ordinary moments until it is far too late to call them ordinary. At the same time, your future spouse wakes up with a feeling they cannot explain. Nothing appears different, yet everything feels different. They stare at the ceiling for a few extra seconds before getting out of bed, carrying a strange expectation they cannot put into words. It feels as though today matters. They just do not know why. Throughout the day, little things refuse to go according to plan. A meeting runs late. A familiar route suddenly changes. Someone cancels at the last minute. Another person unexpectedly appears. What seems like inconvenience slowly becomes redirection. Neither of you realizes that every small delay is quietly guiding two separate paths toward